He worked tirelessly, pouring his heart and soul into the project. But the dream turned into a nightmare. The turning point came during a high-profile demonstration of Tesla's prototype. Jack had overseen every aspect of the vehicle, from its AI-driven navigation system to its state-of-the-art sensors. On paper, it was flawless. The test was meant to be a victory lap, a showcase of innovation. Instead, it became a tragedy. As the car navigated a simulated urban environment, an unexpected variable, a malfunctioning traffic light, threw the AI into confusion. The vehicle failed to react in time, veering off course and crashing into a barrier. Jack's heart sank as he watched helplessly from the control room. But the worst part wasn't the damaged car or the failed demo, it was the fallout. A technician had been stationed near the barrier to monitor the test. The crash had been violent, and the technician, Jack's younger brother, Tim, didn't survive. The incident shattered Jack. His brilliant mind, once so full of vision and hope, was consumed by guilt and grief. In the days that followed, Tesla launched an internal investigation. Musk, a figure Jack had admired for his audacity and ambition, assured the media that the accident was a tragic anomaly. Behind closed doors, though, it was a different story. The blame game began, and while the AI system bore the technical responsibility, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he'd contributed by placing too much faith in technology. He argued with Musk, accusing him of rushing the project and prioritizing innovation over safety. Musk defended his vision, emphasizing the greater good and the sacrifices necessary for progress. Their partnership crumbled. Jack left the industry, disillusioned and heartbroken, retreating to his hometown to find solace in the simplicity of old cars and manual labor. He traded innovation for integrity, swearing never to trust machines over human judgment again. Now, standing in his garage, Jack's fingers brushed against an old photograph pinned to the wall, a snapshot of him and Tim smiling beside the prototype that had changed everything. The corners of the photo were worn, the colors faded, but the memory remained sharp. Jack's ethos was born from that day. For him, cars weren't just machines, they were an extension of the human spirit. Each bolt tightened by hand, each engine tuned by ear, these acts of craftsmanship were his way of maintaining control in a world increasingly dominated by cold, unfeeling automation. And yet, despite his best efforts, the past had a way of catching up. Musk's shadow loomed large, a reminder of the world Jack had tried to leave behind. The futuristic car, parked outside his garage, was more than a technological marvel. It was a symbol of everything he'd lost and everything he feared. As Jack stared at the photograph one last time, his jaw tightened. He knew he couldn't run from his past forever. But the question remained, how much more was he willing to lose? The phone rang with a shrill insistence that cut through the quiet hum of the garage. Jack froze, his grease-stained hands hovering over the carburetor he'd been tinkering with. He rarely got calls these days, and when he did, they were from locals, needing a quick fix, not from unknown numbers with area codes tied to Silicon Valley. After a moment's hesitation, he wiped his hands on a rag and picked up. "Sullivan's garage," he said gruffly. "Jack, it's been a while." The voice was unmistakable, calm, confident, and just a touch smug. "Elon Musk." Jack's grip on the receiver tightened. "Elon," he said flatly. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again." "Didn't think I'd need to call," Musk replied, his tone light but purposeful. "But life's full of surprises, isn't it?" Jack glanced out the window at the sleek, futuristic car parked in his lot. "So, you're the one sending fancy cars to my doorstep." "Should have figured." It's not just any car, Jack, Musk said, the weight of his words evident. You know what this is. Jack snorted, though there was no humor in it. Oh, I know. And I'm telling you now, whatever it needs, you're not getting it from me. A brief silence hung between them, broken only by the faint hum of static on the line. Jack, Musk said, his voice softening, you're the best. You always have been. That's why I came to you. This isn't about me. It's bigger than both of us. Jack felt the old resentment bubbling to the surface, but he forced it down. Save the pitch, Elon. You don't need me. You've got 1,000 engineers smarter and faster than I ever was. Go to them. You think I haven't tried? Musk shot back, frustration creeping into his tone. This car, what's inside it, no one else can handle it. It's bleeding-edge tech, Jack. And it's failing. If it goes down completely, we lose years of work. Lives could be at stake. Jack let out a bitter laugh. You always did know how to dress up a crisis, didn't you? What is it this time? Another demo? Another gamble with someone else's skin in the game? This isn't about the past, Sarpley. It's about the future. You, of all people, should understand that. Jack's jaw clenched. The future. Don't talk to me about the future, Elon. I remember the last time you made promises about that. And I remember what it cost. I remember too, Musk said quietly. Do you think I don't? Jack didn't respond. He couldn't trust the sincerity in Musk's tone, not after everything. Look, Musk continued, his voice taking on a measured, almost pleading tone. I know I've made mistakes. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to help me. For once, we're on the same side. Jack shook his head, even though Musk couldn't see it. Some things aren't worth fixing, Elon, he said firmly. A pause. Then Musk said, You know why I came to you. You know why I need you, Jack. Jack's voice dropped, tinged with something between anger and regret. Yeah, I know. And you know why I can't do this. He hung up the phone, his hand trembling slightly as he set it back on the hook. The rain outside intensified, the sound drowning out the quiet sigh that escaped his lips. Jack turned back to the car, its sleek frame glinting under the fluorescent lights. He stared at it for a long moment, the weight of the past pressing heavily on his shoulders. You just don't get it, do you? He muttered under his breath. The memories hit Jack like a physical blow. It wasn't something he ever wanted to remember, but the images had been burned into his mind, replaying in vivid detail every time he closed his eyes. It was years ago, back when the world still buzzed with the promise of the future. Jack had been a key player in a secret project for Tesla, working alongside some of the brightest minds in the industry. The goal was audacious, self-driving cars that could navigate any road, any environment without human intervention. Jack, for all his skepticism, couldn't deny the allure of the vision. He'd been hired to oversee the final stages of the project, tuning the AI, perfecting the algorithms, ensuring that the technology was as safe as it was revolutionary. But what happened next would change everything. It had been a sunny afternoon, a scheduled test run on a newly developed prototype. Jack had watched the car's sleek form as it sat, engine idling, sensors whirring in anticipation. The vehicle was programmed to navigate a dense urban landscape, stopping for pedestrians, avoiding traffic, and making split-second decisions on its own. This was supposed to be a controlled demonstration, nothing more than a routine test. But as Jack watched the test unfold from his vantage point, something went terribly wrong. A child had run into the street. A small, Sudden movement, a mother pulling her toddler's hand, the child slipping free for just a second enough to throw off the vehicle's calculations. The AI was designed to predict all variables, but it hadn't predicted that. The car miscalculated, swerving to avoid the child and crashing violently into a barrier. But the worst part, the one Jack would never escape, was that his son, Tim, had been standing on the other side of the barrier, part of the testing crew. Tim had been there, his eyes wide with anticipation, just moments before the accident. Jack had seen him, waving excitedly as he stood near the car. But then nothing. The crash had killed Tim instantly. Jack had been there, on the other side of the fence, watching it unfold. It felt as if the world had stopped turning in that moment. The car, the technology, everything that Jack had believed in and worked for had failed him in the most catastrophic way possible. The investigation into the accident pointed to a flaw in the AI's decision-making process, an error in the programming that had caused the car to miscalculate its response to a rapidly changing situation. But Jack wasn't sure if it was the machine's fault or his own. He had trusted it. He had vouched for it. He had thought that, with enough fine-tuning, enough data, it would work. But it didn't. And Tim was dead. The days that followed were a blur of grief and guilt. Jack had stood there in the courtroom during the hearings, unable to speak, his hands shaking as he listened to the experts dissect the failure. He had listened to Elon Musk defend the project, explain the significance of the technology, and insist that the accident was simply a part of the journey toward the future. But Jack couldn't hear it. He couldn't accept it. He blamed Musk. He blamed the entire industry for their blind pursuit of progress, for prioritizing innovation over human lives. Musk's rhetoric about changing the world, about building a future where self-driving cars would eliminate accidents, felt hollow now. Tim's death had been the price of that vision, and Jack had paid it. So he left. He walked away from Tesla, from the world of AI-driven cars, from the technology he had once believed in. He abandoned the promise of a safer future through automation and returned to the simplicity of working with his hands. There was no room for the sterile world of algorithms in his life anymore. His days of fixing machines, of trusting machines, were over. Jack swore never again to be part of a system that treated lives as collateral damage. Back in his small garage, Jack had spent years repairing old cars, nothing automated, nothing AI-driven. He had come to believe that the beauty of a car wasn't in its tech, but in the way it responded to a mechanic's touch, in the hum of an engine that had been carefully tuned by human hands. But even in his seclusion, the ghosts of the past refused to let him go. Jack sat at his workbench, the tools laid out before him, and stared at the old photograph taped to the wall above. It was a picture of him and Tim, taken at the prototype's final testing. They were laughing, arms around each other, unaware that it would be the last time they would stand together like that. His fingers traced the edges of the photo, the smooth surface worn from years of handling. A deep, aching pain settled in his chest as he whispered, almost to himself. The rain outside had stopped, but Jack felt as if the storm inside him would never end. He stood slowly, his gaze still fixed on the photograph. The weight of the decision he had made all those years ago, the decision to walk away from everything, to bury the past, seemed heavier than ever. And yet, the call from Musk, the car outside, the knowledge that history had come knocking again. Jack wasn't sure how much longer he could keep running. But for now, as he turned back to his workbench, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, he wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The garage door groaned as it rolled open, the familiar sound sending a jolt through Jack's spine. The bright daylight filtered in, but it did little to warm the cold, tense atmosphere that had settled over him. His hand hovered over the wrench in his pocket, his instincts telling him to get back to work, to lose himself in the rhythmic click of metal against metal, but something stopped him. The familiar hum of an electric vehicle interrupted his thoughts. Jack turned slowly, his gaze narrowing as a sleek, futuristic car slid into view, its design unmistakable. He felt a pang of recognition, followed by a deep, simmering anger. This was the kind of car that had destroyed his life. The kind that could be responsible for another tragedy, if left unchecked. Car's engine purred to a stop, and out of the driver's seat stepped Elon Musk himself. Jack's heart thudded in his chest. He wasn't surprised, but still, seeing Musk in the flesh was like seeing a ghost. The man who had changed the world, or, depending on your view, ruined, it was standing right there in front of him. Musk adjusted his coat, his usual smile more mechanical than genuine. He took a slow step forward, glancing at the cluttered, old-school garage that Jack had made his refuge. His eyes swept over the tools, the worn-out workbench, and the grease-streaked walls. "You've done well for yourself, Jack," Musk said, his voice smooth, almost condescending. "This place, it's like a museum." Jack didn't answer. He didn't have to. Musk already knew how Jack felt about him and everything he stood for. The disdain in the air was thick enough to cut through. "You know why I'm here," Musk continued, his tone shifting, more serious now. "The car, it needs your expertise. We're running out of time." Jack gritted his teeth, his fingers curling into fists. The sight of Musk, the man who had been a catalyst in the most tragic event of his life, was like rubbing salt into a wound that would never heal. "I don't fix your toys, Elon," Jack replied, his voice colder than he intended. "Not anymore." Musk's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just any car, Jack. You know that. This technology, it's vital. It could save lives. We're talking about the future of transportation, about preventing accidents before they even happen. You're the best at what you do. I need you." Jack's jaw clenched. "And I've seen firsthand the cost of that so-called future. You don't get it, do you? You can't just play with technology like it's some kind of game. You're putting people's lives on the line, Musk. You're pushing forward with innovations that aren't ready for the real world, and you're paying the price in blood." Musk's expression faltered for just a moment, but then he regained his composure. "I know about the accident, Jack. I never wanted that to happen. You have to understand. But this," he gestured toward the car, "this is different. We've learned from the past. This car, it has new safety protocols, new algorithms. It's not like what happened before." Jack's eyes burned with frustration. "You say you've learned, but the truth is, you're too focused on the future to care about the past. What about the people who paid the price for your vision? What about my son?" Musk's face softened, a fleeting moment of vulnerability. "I can't undo what happened, Jack. I wish I could. I wish I could go back and change it. But we can't live in the past. We have to move forward. For Tim's memory, for the future. This technology, it's not just about the cars. It's about saving lives. Making sure nothing like that happens again." Jack's throat tightened. The weight of Musk's words threatened to choke him, but he refused to let them take hold. He took a step closer to the car, staring at it as if it were a symbol of everything that had gone wrong in his life. "That's what you always say, isn't it?" Jack spat. "We're saving lives. We're making things better. But how many more have to die before you realize that your ambition is costing more lives than you're saving?" Musk's eyes flashed, but his voice remained steady. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't think about the lives lost every single day? I can't fix the past, Jack, but I can shape the future. And this, he placed a hand on the car, his gaze intense. This is the future. We're talking about technology that can prevent crashes, reduce fatalities, change the way people move. There's a responsibility in that. I'm not going to shy away from it just because one test failed. We owe it to the people who still have a chance. We owe it to the next generation. Jack took a deep breath, his anger warring with the flicker of doubt that Musk's words had sparked in him. He wanted to scream, to push Musk away, but something in his chest tightened, a small, gnawing part of him that had always believed in the promise of technology, the same part that had once stood beside Musk, working to build a better future. But that belief had died with Tim. Jack exhaled slowly, his voice dropping to a whisper. I don't know if you're trying to save lives, or if you're just too damn obsessed with your vision to see the cost. I don't know if you've learned anything at all. All I know is that I can't be a part of it. There was a long silence between them, one charged with history, pain, and impossible choices. Musk met Jack's eyes, his voice calm but resolute. I'm not asking you to forget the past, Jack. I'm asking you to help us build a future. The future you were part of before everything went wrong. I need you. The world needs you. Jack's heart hammered in his chest, torn between the man he had once admired and the man who had left him broken. The world needed what Musk had to offer, but Jack wasn't sure he could live with the consequences. Some things aren't worth fixing, Elon, Jack muttered, his voice strained with years of grief. Musk's expression faltered, just for a moment, before he took a step back, lowering his hand from the car. You know why I'm here, Jack. You know why I'm asking. Jack's gaze hardened, his words heavy with meaning. You know why I can't do this, Elon. The silence that followed was suffocating. Neither man spoke. Neither man moved. Jack turned his back to Musk, the weight of the past pressing down on him like a mountain. The night was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the garage and the distant hum of the city that Jack had long since tuned out. Car sat there, a sleek, imposing presence in the center of the cluttered space. Jack stood before it, his arms crossed over his chest, his brow furrowed in thought. The silence was almost suffocating. He had asked for peace, but it was the kind of peace that only came with the weight of impossible decisions. Repairing the car would mean confronting everything he had spent the past decade running from. It would mean stepping back into a world that had betrayed him, a world where ambition and technology were worshipped at the cost of lives. Jack wasn't sure he could stomach it. But then again, refusing could mean sabotaging something that could change the world, something that could save lives. The very idea gnawed at him. What if this time Musk had truly learned from the past? What if this technology, with its new safety measures, could prevent the kind of disaster that had destroyed his life? Could Jack really stand in the way of that? Could he afford to? The decision felt like an anchor, dragging him down into the depths of uncertainty. Jack ran a hand through his graying hair, his fingers trembling as he stared at the car. For a moment, he was no longer the mechanic he had become, but the young man in the thick of innovation, working side by side with Musk on groundbreaking projects. He had been a part of something much bigger than himself back then, and the temptation to be a part of it again was strong. But at what cost? A knock at the door broke his thoughts. Jack didn't need to ask who it was. He could feel it. "Come in, Charlie," Jack said quietly, his voice lacking its usual force. Charlie, an old friend and former mentor to Jack, stepped into the garage. He was a wiry man, with a sharp, no-nonsense look that complemented his years of experience in the trade. His eyes flicked to the car, then back to Jack, the understanding between them almost palpable. He had known Jack long enough to recognize when something was weighing heavily on his mind. "You're still thinking about it, huh?" Charlie asked, leaning against a nearby workbench. "I don't need to ask if you're going to do it. I can see it in your eyes." Jack sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know anymore, Charlie. I want to do the right thing, but I can't tell what that is. Fixing this thing. It's like signing away everything I believe in. It feels like betraying my own son's memory." Charlie nodded slowly. "I get it. But you've been holding on to that anger for a long time now. It's eating you alive, Jack. That grief, it's turning to something darker. What's the point of carrying that weight forever if there's a chance to make something good out of it?" Jack's gaze flicked to the car again, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. It's not just about the past. It's about the future. The future I swore I'd never be a part of. Yeah, but what if the future's already here? Charlie's voice was quiet, almost gentle. What if you can still have a say in how it plays out? You've always been a man of integrity, Jack. No one's questioning that. But you've got a chance to make sure this time the tech's not left unchecked. You've got a chance to make it right. So what are you going to do? Jack's heart pounded in his chest, and for a moment he felt like he was drowning in the complexity of the decision. It wasn't just about fixing a car, it was about his entire philosophy. His distrust of technology, his hatred for the people who put profit over people, and most of all, his fear of losing himself, of becoming the very thing he despised. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive," Jack muttered, more to himself than to Charlie. "I don't know if I'm ready to trust again." Charlie smiled faintly, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. "It's not about forgiveness, Jack. It's about moving forward. And if you're going to do that, you need to let go of the past. Not forget it, but let go." For a long time, there was only the sound of Jack's breathing and the faint hum of the garage lights. The weight of Charlie's words pressed down on him. Maybe this wasn't about forgiveness. Maybe it was about redemption. Maybe it wasn't about fixing a broken car. It was about fixing himself. Jack exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in his body release. He had spent so long running from his own grief that he had forgotten what it was like to move forward. To choose a future instead of being shackled by the past. But he wasn't ready to make the decision alone. "I need to think more about this," Jack said, his voice steadier now. "But there's something I've got to do first." Charlie nodded and stepped toward the door. "Take all the time you need, Jack. But remember, whatever you decide, you're not alone." As the door closed behind him, Jack turned back to the car. He took one last, lingering look at it. There were so many unknowns ahead, but one thing was certain. Whatever choice he made, it would change everything. And he knew, deep down, the time to make that choice was almost upon him. The tension in the garage was palpable as the morning sun began to filter through the grimy windows. The car Musk's car still stood in the center of the cluttered space, a monument to the crossroads Jack had reached. The decision had been made. Jack walked up to the car, his hands steady, but his mind racing. He had chosen the path that neither fully healed his wounds, nor completely betrayed his principles. It was a compromise, but compromises were the price of progress. With a final glance at the looming frame of the car, Jack turned and motioned to the driver, who had been waiting outside since dawn. "You tell Musk that I'll fix it," Jack said, his voice low but resolute. The driver's eyes widened, clearly taken aback. "You're sure? After everything?" Jack nodded once. "I'm sure. But he needs to understand something. This isn't about technology, Elon. This is about responsibility. If he wants this car fixed, there are conditions. The driver nodded eagerly, immediately pulling out his phone to send a message. As Jack watched him, he felt a strange calm settle over him. There was a strange satisfaction in knowing he wasn't just fixing the car. He was fixing the world that had broken him. Or at least, he was trying. It didn't take long before Musk himself appeared, stepping into the garage with his usual air of confidence. But this time, it was tempered with an undercurrent of tension. His eyes locked on Jack's, and for a moment, neither spoke. "Let me hear it," Musk said, his tone still as charismatic as ever, but Jack could tell he was on edge. This was no longer just about fixing a car. It was about something deeper, something personal. Jack didn't waste time. "First," he began, his voice steady, "you're going to make sure that this car's technology prioritizes safety. No more shortcuts. No more compromises for the sake of speed or innovation. You make the tech as reliable as human hands, or I won't lay a finger on it." Musk opened his mouth to argue, but Jack raised a hand to stop him. "Second, there's going to be accountability for every single part of this system. I'm talking about full transparency in your testing, your safety measures, and every single report. If something goes wrong, you'll answer for it, not just the engineers, but you. You understand?" Musk's expression hardened, and for a moment, Jack thought he might back down. But then, something shifted in Musk's eyes. He nodded slowly, the weight of Jack's words sinking in. "I agree. But there's something you need to understand, Jack. I didn't come here to play games. This project, it could change everything. The car's not just a machine, it's a lifeline. I'm not asking you to stop innovating, Elon," Jack said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm asking you to remember the cost of it. Every life you save with your technology, every life you help, comes at the cost of the ones who've already been lost. Don't forget that." Musk stared at him, something unreadable in his expression. Finally, he spoke. "I won't forget, Jack. I promise." There was an unspoken agreement between them, a moment of mutual respect. It wasn't a kind of resolution that would change the world overnight, but it was a start. And for Jack, that was enough. The next few days were a blur of activity in the garage. Jack worked meticulously on the car, his hands moving with the practiced ease of a craftsman. Each part he touched felt like a small act of defiance against the forces that had tried to break him. He worked with a sense of purpose, determined to breathe new life into the technology that had once brought him so much pain. As Jack worked, he didn't just fix the car, he transformed it. Each bolt tightened, each wire reconnected, was an act of redemption. It wasn't just about the car. It was about rebuilding his own faith in himself, in the world, and in the possibility of change. The repair process was long and painstaking. It required Jack to dig deep into the heart of the car's systems, ensuring that each component met his standards of safety and responsibility. Musk had given him free rein, but Jack could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. Every decision he made carried the potential for both success and failure. At one point, as he was recalibrating the vehicle's AI-driven system, he paused. The memory of his son's smile flashed before his eyes, and the pang of loss cut through him like a knife. He thought about the world his son would never get to experience, the life he would never lead. But in that moment, Jack realized something. He wasn't just fixing the car for Musk. He was fixing it for his son. He was giving meaning to the tragedy, using his skills to prevent others from suffering the same fate. When the final part was in place, Jack stepped back, wiping the sweat from his brow. The car was more than just a machine now. It was a symbol of his own growth. A symbol of hope. Musk returned to the garage later that afternoon, his face lighting up as he saw the completed work. "Is it done?" he asked, his voice laced with anticipation. "It's done," Jack replied, his voice steady but proud. "It's safe. It's as safe as it can be. But don't forget what it cost to get here." Musk studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I won't forget." "Thank you, Jack." And for the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of peace settle over him. The job was done. The car was fixed. But more importantly, he had fixed a part of himself. The sun had barely risen over the city when the call came. It was Musk, his voice filled with urgency but tempered with gratitude. "Jack, the car's been deployed," Musk said. "It's in the middle of a disaster zone. Earthquake victims need help, and the car is making its way through the rubble, delivering medical supplies and rescuing people. It's working flawlessly." Jack stood in his garage, holding the phone to his ear, a quiet smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. For the first time in a long while, he felt something close to pride. "Good," Jack replied simply, his tone calm yet satisfied. "That's all I needed to hear." The car, now fully functional and equipped with the safety systems Jack had insisted on, was proving its worth in real time. The once futuristic, risky technology was now doing what it was always meant to do: save lives. Jack knew that every person the car helped, every life it touched, validated his decision to repair it. A week later, the media buzzed with the news of the car's success. The reports came in waves, each one a testament to the vehicle's reliability. It wasn't just a technological marvel anymore. It had become a lifeline. Videos of the car navigating dangerous roads, delivering supplies to remote areas, and rescuing injured survivors were circulating across news platforms. But perhaps the most powerful moment came during a live-streamed press conference with Elon Musk. He stood at a podium, flanked by engineers and emergency response teams, as reporters flooded the room with questions. Musk's face was a mixture of pride and solemnity. "This car, this project, is proof of what's possible when we balance innovation with responsibility," Musk said, his voice steady. Jack's conditions were harsh, but they were necessary. Without his expertise and his insistence on safety, we wouldn't be here today. I owe him a debt that can't be repaid. The crowd went silent for a moment, and then the applause began. Jack watched from his small, humble garage, where he had spent countless hours working on the very car Musk was now praising. He didn't need the recognition. The success of the car, the lives it saved, was enough for him. But he appreciated the acknowledgement. It meant that, in the end, his principles had been worth the struggle. Jack sat down later that evening, staring out the window at the quiet street outside. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, the calm after the storm. His garage, once a place of frustration and pain, now felt different. It was a place of healing. He reflected on his journey. The weight of the past seemed lighter. The pain of losing his son would never fully fade, but he had found a way to live with it, to honor it. In fixing the car, Jack had fixed more than just a machine. He had fixed his own heart. He thought about his son, about the dream of a future that would never be. But he also thought about the future Jack had helped create. The work he had done had meaning now, a deeper significance. He had ensured that future innovations would be shaped with respect for human life. In the quiet of his garage, Jack felt at peace for the first time in years. The road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but he had found his way back to his core beliefs, that progress should never come at the expense of humanity, and that real innovation was about making the world safer, better for everyone. And in that moment, Jack knew one thing for sure: the journey had been worth it. Years passed, but Jack's influence never faded. The world had changed, evolving rapidly with technology that once seemed impossible now integrated into every aspect of daily life. Self-driving cars had become a norm, reshaping industries, saving lives, and sparking new debates about the future. Yet, amid all these advancements, Jack's name had become a symbol of a crucial philosophy: that true progress must be built on a foundation of ethics and humanity. In the tech world, Jack was no longer just a mechanic. He was a legend. His work on that single car had set the tone for an entire movement, a movement that urged tech companies, including Tesla, to consider the human cost of every innovation. The vehicle he had repaired was still in service, and its modifications, Jack's insistence on safety and accountability, had been implemented in every self-driving car produced by Tesla thereafter. Elon Musk, who had once sparred with Jack over the importance of technology versus human lives, stood in front of a packed auditorium during a major Tesla conference, acknowledging the profound impact Jack had had on the company's trajectory. Without Jack, Tesla wouldn't have the ethical framework it operates under today, Musk said, his voice carrying weight and sincerity. He taught us all that technology must be wielded responsibly, and that the true mark of innovation is how it serves humanity. Jack's legacy will be felt for generations. The crowd responded with applause, but Jack wasn't there to hear it. He had never sought fame or recognition. He was content in his small workshop, continuing his work, repairing old machines, and offering guidance to anyone who asked. He had found peace, knowing that his principles were embedded in the very fabric of Tesla's future. One bright afternoon, Jack stood in front of a new class of mechanics, young, eager faces, filled with the promise of the future. They gathered around him, hanging on every word as he spoke about the importance of craftsmanship, the art of repair, and, most importantly, the need to respect the tools they worked with and the lives their work impacted. Technology can do amazing things, Jack said, his voice steady but filled with conviction. But at the end of the day, it's the people who matter. The technology has to serve them. If we forget that, we lose everything. The students absorbed his every word. Jack knew that in their hands lay the future of the industry, but he also knew that with the right guidance, they would remember the lessons he had taught them, to always balance innovation with humanity, to never forget the cost of progress. The rain tapped gently on the tin roof of the small garage, nestled at the edge of town. Inside, Jack, an old-school mechanic with grease-stained hands and a weathered face, leaned over the open hood of a 1972 Mustang. A mix of motor oil and nostalgia filled the air, blending perfectly with the faint hum of a radio playing classic rock. Jack loved this life. The simplicity of machines he could control, the hum of an engine he could predict. This garage was his sanctuary, a place untouched by the relentless march of technology. The screech of tires broke his focus. Jack straightened, wiping his hands on a tattered rag. His eyes squinted toward the entrance as a sleek, futuristic car glided silently into the driveway. Its metallic sheen reflected the garage lights, a machine that didn't belong in a place like this. "Great," Jack muttered under his breath, tossing the rag onto the workbench. The car came to a halt, its gull-wing doors hissing open. A sharply dressed man in a tailored black suit stepped out, carrying himself with the kind of confidence that screamed money. "Are you Jack?" the man asked, his voice smooth but urgent. "Depends on who's asking," Jack replied, arms crossed. The man offered a thin smile. "My name's Harris. I work for Mr. Elon Musk. We need your expertise." Jack froze. His eyes darted to the car, now fully illuminated under the fluorescent lights. Recognition flickered across his face. The vehicle was unlike anything he'd ever seen up close, sleek lines, holographic displays shimmering faintly through the tinted windows, and an insignia that confirmed his suspicion, Tesla Experimental Division. "No," Jack said firmly, stepping back. Harris blinked, visibly taken aback. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Jack repeated, his voice as solid as the wrenches on his wall. Harris frowned. "You don't even know what the problem is. This isn't just any car. It's—" "I know what it is," Jack interrupted, his tone sharp. "And I'm not touching it." Harris adjusted his tie, clearly unused to being refused. "This car needs urgent repairs. It's not just a machine, it's a prototype carrying technology that could revolutionize the world, save humanity, blah, blah, blah," Jack cut in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I've heard it all before." There was a moment of silence, heavy with tension. Jack's jaw tightened as he stared at the car, his fingers unconsciously clenching and unclenching. "This isn't about you," Harris pressed, his tone softening. "This is bigger than any of us. If we don't get this fixed soon, the entire project could be compromised." Jack chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. "You think I care about Musk's little pet projects? Take it somewhere else." Harris sighed, glancing back at the car as if hoping it might fix itself. "I was told you're the best. That if anyone could handle this, it'd be you." Jack's face hardened. "I'm not interested." Harris took a step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Look, you have a history with Mr. Musk. He specifically requested you for this job." The air seemed to thicken. Jack's eyes flicked to Harris, then back to the car. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the workbench. "Not his car." "Not again," Jack muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "What did you say?" Harris asked, leaning in. Jack turned abruptly, walking away toward the Mustang. "You heard me. Take that thing and leave." Harris stood there, stunned, as the rain outside intensified, pounding against the garage's tin roof. The futuristic car hummed faintly, almost as if it was alive, its presence a silent reminder of the unresolved tension. The chapter ends with Jack slamming his toolbox shut, his face a storm of emotions, leaving Harris and the car in an uneasy silence. The rain continued to drum on the garage roof as Jack leaned against the workbench, his thoughts drifting back to a time long before the grease-stained overalls and quiet solitude of his small-town workshop. Decades ago, Jack Sullivan wasn't just another mechanic, he was a prodigy. In his prime, he stood at the forefront of the automotive world, renowned for his ingenuity and unwavering dedication to perfection. At 25, he'd already made a name for himself, revolutionizing engine designs and earning the respect of industry giants. His skill wasn't just in fixing cars, it was in understanding them, coaxing them to perform at their absolute best. Jack's rise to fame was meteoric. He became the go-to expert for cutting-edge projects, his name synonymous with precision and reliability. It wasn't long before the big leagues came calling. Tesla, still a burgeoning force in the automotive world, sought out his expertise for a groundbreaking initiative, the development of fully autonomous vehicles.